and welcome to Merryweather Knitting. Today I'm going to share some of my long-lost knitting projects with you. I found these while visiting my mom in America, and it was so much fun to rediscover some of the things I had even forgotten I'd made. The first project I have to share with you is this little hat, which was the very second hat I ever knit, and also the second hat knit with this pattern. This is the Orchids and Fairy Lights pattern by Tiny Owl Knits. And if you've never seen Tiny Owl Knits designs, you must go check them out. She has the most whimsical designs, and she was one of my very first real inspirations in the knitting realm. This hat features a very intuitive cable bobble pattern, and so it was actually very appropriate for a beginner knitter as well. A beginner looking for a challenge, that is. It was knit using the suggested Malabrigo Worsted weight yarn in a blue denim-like colorway that's very tonal and beautiful. I really enjoyed this pattern. It's the perfect one skein worsted weight project. The next project I want to share with you is one that I'm almost ashamed of because I was so close to being finished. And this is the Waterlily top from Pom Pom magazine. It was from an issue a few years ago, and it was a lovely summery top. This is knit in a drops fingering weight yarn. I finished the stockinette body and half of the lace, but then I just stopped. I think that I really didn't like the color very much because I didn't think it would suit me. It is a beautiful color, just not for me, so I won't be finishing it, unfortunately. Esmeralda wants to join. This was my very first experiment in Fair Isle knitting, or stranded knitting, and it was this sock cuff. And I remember I really enjoyed this process. I thought, wow, Fair Isle stranded knitting is so much easier than I expected. But for some reason, after knitting the heel flap and gusset, I decided to stop and I never knit the foot or the second sock. It's a very cute, beautiful motif, very wintry. I knit this out of Knit Picks palette yarn in a kind of natural cream tone in a light blue. This is another extremely perplexing project to me. This pair of socks was almost finished. I had completed the first sock, and about half of the second sock I was halfway through knitting the heel flap, and I just stopped knitting, and I'm looking at this pattern and this project. I just don't understand why I stopped. It's such a beautiful yarn. It's such a lovely colorway. This is definitely Regia yarn. But I guess I just gave up on these socks, which is a real shame. I wish I hadn't. If I could find this yarn, I would complete this pair of socks now. But the rest of the yarn is nowhere to be found at my mom's, so I think that these are just going to be going away into the tomb of forgotten knitting pieces, just like the rest of these. This next project is a big shawl knit out of worsted weight yarn that was gifted to me. I'm not sure what kind of fiber this is. I think it must be wool, like superwash wool or something. This is the Elder Tree Shawl by Sylvia McFadden, and it's a beautiful pattern that's just featuring this gorgeous lace motif. I remember this kind of being a very mindless knit, actually, despite all the beautiful lace. So I would definitely recommend this pattern as well. All of the patterns that I mentioned will be linked below. special thanks to my mom for keeping this little basket of knits that were half finished. I really didn't expect her to keep them. I don't know what I expected her to do with them, but I was so surprised, so pleasantly surprised to find them, and it was just fun to kind of relive those little knits and also those finished objects. It's always so sweet if I see that she's kept things I've made. That's all I have to share with you today. I hope you have a wonderful week with lots of happy knitting. See you next time.